What advice or practical tips would you have for a professional who's reflecting on their behavior and wishes to work on this area?
Consider the fundamentals. Respect. What are a few simple things one can do each day to be a bit more respectful? Go to work, look around, see the people who are there, smile at them, say hello, hold the door open. If you don't know their name, ask their name. And then if you're like me, do whatever you can to remember their name. It's not always easy. Simple things. At the end of the day, go home, look in the mirror, think, did I do my best today? Was I the person that I really want to be or aspire to be today? Just reflect. And speaking of reflect, that's the awareness part. This is also part of being aware. Can we be more aware of what's happening for us each day? Maybe we're a little tired, irritated for some reason, hungry, that sort of thing.
Do you have any suggestions for someone who wishes to approach a colleague to discuss their behavior and how to approach that?
If we frame it in terms of disruptive behavior, which is, as I said earlier, the platform from which all of this thinking has emanated for me, then the answer, it can take days to answer that question in terms of learning the skills for physician leaders, giving them tools to approach a colleague whose behavior perhaps has been perceived as disruptive. Now, when I talk about responding to a colleague whose behavior seems to be troubled or disruptive, I'm also putting into the same category behavior which may indeed also reflect distress, maybe even illness, as well as uncivil behavior. I'm considering it all together. And they do intermingle, of course. First, we need to react. We need to be responsible so that we will react. And that is being aware of the intuitive response inside that something's not right, recognizing and being aware of our own discomfort and what we've just seen, and moving past any of the thought slogans that would keep us from acting. It's not my business, somebody else will take care of this, I don't want to upset them, I don't know what to do. All of those sorts of thoughts come to us readily. It's understandable, it's human nature, but it's also human nature to be there for one another. So the first step in reacting is to overcome the reluctance to act. Once that's done, it starts with, how are you? I'm concerned about you today. You seem to be upset. So an appropriately compassionate opening line, an invitation, is the first right thing to do. And after that, we have a conversation. Are you okay? You seem upset. What's happening for you? What happened there? As you know, in the principles of motivational interviewing, we also want to try to understand what the other person was trying to achieve. Acknowledge that and respect that. It's probably honorable, it's probably positive, it usually is. It's just the way that individual chose to go about it was not that positive or constructive, and at the end of the day probably isn't helpful in reaching the actual goal that they were seeking. And that gives us a chance to align with helping them reach their goals, but being willing to explore more positive ways to do it. And then finally, providing an opportunity to point them in a direction where help could be obtained or education could be obtained. Support, perhaps, may just be a website, something to read, a number to call. And finally, followed up. Let's talk again tomorrow or next week and see how you're doing.
Are there ever situations where uncivil behavior would be okay?
I do a fair bit of teaching and workshops around this concept of civility, and I always ask. And it's interesting to hear what people have to say. Most of the time, in a group of doctors, when I ask, is incivility ever acceptable? The answer is, yeah. There are certain circumstances where most doctors would say it's okay. But when I explore that a little bit, what I realize is we may not be thinking about the nature of the behavior in quite the same way. And what I mean by that is most doctors would say that in moments of tension or in critical moments, emergency situations, perhaps when the tension runs high in patient care, be it ER, OR, ICU environments, that kind of thing. A lot of doctors say that's when I have to behave the way I have to behave in order to get the job done, and by the way, the responsibility stops with me. And so they say, I'm justified in speaking to others or behaving in a way that may not be civil. Really what they mean is being forthright, being forceful, being directive, that sort of thing. And really I like to explore that. And when we explore it, I think actually there's nothing uncivil about that. That's exactly perhaps the kind of interaction called for in the moment. To take leadership, to be responsible, which I think are also very important concepts of civility, to help the others be their best and to do their best as part of the team for the best possible outcome. My point is that can be done without anger, and it can be done without profanity, which these things do flare up. And it can be done still in a respectful way, designed to help everybody be their best. So is uncivil behavior ever a good thing? Personally, I don't think so.